Good afternoon, everyone. And as folks join us in the room, let me welcome you to the International Relations Council and a really special conversation this afternoon. The world is here, international in Kansas City. Today, we're going to explore not only what makes Kansas City international, but importantly, why it matters that Kansas City is international. My name is Matthew Hughes, and I have the privilege of serving as the executive director of the International Relations Council. If you're new to the IRC, we're an educational nonprofit membership organization based in Kansas City. Our goal is to create opportunities for you to learn about and discuss the world's most important issues and how they affect us all. And today's a special day. It is the IRC's first Global Horizons event, which is a day for all of us to expand our horizons. For the whole day, the IRC is hosting Zoom events that cover the full range of IRC programs and a wide variety of topics. And because of generous members and donors, all of today's events are free for you to attend. I'll post a link shortly in the chat box with more information about today's events. Please do check it out and try attending an event you haven't been to before. It's now my great pleasure to introduce our moderator today, who will introduce our panelists and guide the conversation. Dr. Charles Bankart is the Associate Vice Provost for International Affairs at the University of Kansas, where he serves as KU's Senior International Affairs Officer. You'll get to know Charlie through the course of the conversation, but I would just like to signal that he served on the board of directors of NAFSA, the Association of International Educators, from 2011 through 2016, and just a few years before that, served in Hungary as an English language instructor for the US Peace Corps. Charlie, thank you so much for being here and helping us with this conversation. Please take it away.
Matthew, thank you. And thank you for your generosity for just a few years ago of being in the Peace Corps. I'd like to extend a special thank you to the International Relations Council of Kansas City for its international leadership and for making events like today's possible. Your critical community partners and your efforts are so deeply appreciated. Good afternoon, everyone. I am just thrilled that you are here with us as we discuss the Kansas City metro area as a wonderfully complex community that is deeply connected with the world. As an educator myself at the University of Kansas, I see this each and every day in the faces and context of our students, our faculty, our staff, in our outreach and partnerships with the Kansas City metro community, in our curriculum, and in the impact of our teaching and research. KU has continuously enrolled international students for over 130 years now, with over 100 nations represented on our campus today, and over 150 nations as home to our great alumni family. And we teach over 29 different languages, and roughly 30% of our students at KU study abroad before they graduate, placing us in the top 24 in the nation in terms of outbound engagement with the world. And as a way of getting started, I think about why do we do this at KU? Well, we do it because of you and because we understand that Kansas City is inherently international, and it's KU's job to support and enable that. Our goal at KU is to prepare our graduates to work, live, and lead in a global society full of international connections, and to help our students understand that whether they are here in Kansas City, in Paris, in Johannesburg, in Bogota, or Hanoi, their success, our collective success as a community, depends on how well they connect with the same world that our lives are so intimately intertwined with, whether we recognize those connections or not. Now, if the pandemic has taught us anything, it's that our health as a society is an ever-evolving global challenge, and it behooves us to work across borders as we develop and implement solutions. Now, I have a wonderful group of panelists with me this afternoon who will help us bring Kansas City's international nature and context into focus through their professional and personal experiences. It is my pleasure to introduce you to these community leaders, and I'd like to ask our panelists to turn their cameras on. I'd like to introduce you first to head consul of the Mexican consulate here in Kansas City, Consul Navarro-Bernachi. Consul Navarro has served in several consular and political capacities in the Republic of Ecuador, as well as San Diego, California, Phoenix, Arizona, And before taking office in Kansas City, he spent 5 years at the Secretariat of Foreign-Mexico Relations headquarters in Mexico City, where he was Deputy Director General in the Directorate General of Protection of Mexicans Abroad. He has a major in communications and journalism and a master's degree in diplomatic studies. I'd also like to introduce you to Feng Shen, who's a partner at Hush Blackwell LLP and leads the firm's Asia practice. Ms. Shen grew up in China and received legal education in both the United States and China. Her practice focuses on international transactions, mergers and acquisitions, commercial transactions, and financing. She holds a JD degree from UMKC Law School, so is one of our very own in this community, and an LLB from People's University in China. Ms. Feng is a native speaker of Mandarin Chinese. And finally, I'd like to introduce you to Carolyn Watley, who is the current board chair of the Chamber of Commerce and serves as the vice president for community engagement for CBiz, where she focuses on public-facing business development initiatives, board participation roles, and community stewardship. During her over 30-year tenure with CBiz, Ms. Watley has held many roles, ranging from office manager to manager of corporate accounts to chief facilitating officer, and grew the company to the largest employee benefits consulting firm in Kansas City area with over 100 employees. She was appointed president of CBiz Benefits Insurance Services in Kansas City in 1999 and served in this role for 17 years prior to taking on her current position. So please join me in welcoming our panelists. It's a pleasure to share this virtual stage with you all. And to begin our conversation this afternoon, I'd like to have each of you share a little bit from your own professional and personal experience. And to start with, Ms. Watley, maybe you could speak to how you see international activity as a part of your everyday professional and personal life as a member of the KC Metro community.
Thank you so much. That was a great introduction, and I'm excited to be here. And you talked about expanding horizons, and it's just been expanding my own horizons just to focus on this and think about how exciting this whole topic is. So as mentioned, I'm the current chair of the Greater Kansas City Chamber, and we have a World Trade Center. We're focusing on helping our local companies grow and thrive internationally as well. And we want them to think about becoming exporters to, globally, and how can we help them do that? So we have concierge service that we help in that regard. We also at the Chamber have a welcoming plan. So we want to make certain that our region is very welcoming to those who are coming here and immigrants who are coming here. And we want to provide all the support services that we possibly can for those immigrants and make this a very welcoming place, an attractive place for workers to come. We also want to grow in such a way that everyone is included. So we focus a lot on opportunities, job opportunities, and growing careers that have living wages. So we want those who come here and are working here to be able to support themselves and their families. So that's very important to us. We also want to be a place that's very attractive for companies to come to Kansas City, open up perhaps an office. An international company can open up an office here or even have a headquarters here. And also we want companies here to be able to grow and expand globally. So those are all very important. I'm involved in our KC Rising initiative, and we're extremely focused on in-migration. So we're thinking about Kansas City and our region and whether or not are people net coming into Kansas City or net migrating out of Kansas City. And we need and want to be a place where in-migration we are successful at in-migration. So we are really focusing on that. And we know that our diverse businesses will be much more financially successful. And so we think that's very important to help our growth as well. And lastly, for my employer, from CBiz perspective, we provide business services for companies. And so we help them with issues related to, for example, international tax or employee benefit issues related to having employees overseas and what the benefit, how they should offer the benefit packages to those folks as well. So I'm thinking about it all the time in many different capacities, and it's great to be here.
Thank you so much. And, I think that those are really, really important points. And creating that dynamic context where so much can happen within the KC metro area, and we're supporting and creating a context for local employers to attract and to stay here, a really diverse, engaged community. But that idea of net immigration, I think, and what we do as a community to support that and make people feel like there's a place that they belong here is important work, and so appreciate your bringing that out. Ms. Shen, I was wondering if you would like to speak to, from your professional and personal life, where you see international activity as kind of a central part of your daily life in the KC metro area.
Yeah, thank you. So I felt like myself is the answer to your question, which is, how does international touch your professional life and personal life? So obviously, in your introduction, I wasn't born here, so I grew up in China. So I have always wanted to open my mind to a bigger world. That's why I chose to come to the States, UMKC, for law school. At that point, I wasn't sure if I was going to be eventually being able to find that international life in Kansas City. I'm happy to report after 20 years, I'm pleasantly impressed that I found the combination. I would illustrate a little bit. First, for professional life, I was never sure if I was able to continue to do the kind of international work, but I tell you, I not only do, most of my work are international, because by nature, I'm an international transaction attorney, which means on any given day, I'm working with a Kansas City business, either for their foreign operations or sometimes for foreign investors who want to come to the States to set up their company or look for some kind of a transaction to help their company. So any given day, I'm talking or emailing to people in Europe, Asia, Latin America, anywhere you can imagine. That's actually what I do every single day. On a personal level, because I benefited so much myself professionally, so I make sure my children understand, international education, how important it is. So I make sure that they go to all these wonderful events some of our local organization can offer. For example, I'm very actively involved in organizations such as the IRC, for example, that offers a lot of programs, but also organizations such as Asian Chamber, Kansas City Chinese Association, that offers all these programs that help young people to open their mind and see how people are different in different parts of the world. I make sure my children are part of that. They come to all these events. So to answer your question in a short way, I feel like international, the word touch my life every single way, every minute of the day. And I'm very glad I can do it here, because one of the reasons I chose to stay in Kansas City is I also love the so naturally American part of it, like how friendly people are here, how family oriented, how open space, and all of those things that offer me the American life aspect, but I was able to balance that with the international life. So hopefully that answers your question.
Oh, it definitely does. And, for me, it's so nice to hear you speak of that, because we're kindred spirits. And it is exactly the same reason why I find it home here.
Mm-hmm.
You've got that community that's warm and engaging and just beautifully unique in so many different ways. And yet you don't feel like you're sacrificing your engagement and involvement with the world. It's here and it's a part of us. And there's so much that we can thrive on and incorporate into our family and personal and professional lives. So thank you for that. Consul Navarro, you've been here now. I think we met first about 5 years ago. And you are now fully a part of our community, and your family and your professional life and your advocacy through your work at the consulate. Talk with us a little bit about your professional and personal experience as an international community here, and how you see that.
Thank you. Thank you to my fellow panelists, and thank you, Charlie, as well as the International Relations Council. International Relations Council has been certainly a very powerful influence and in the last year in order to connect people from several walks of life, industries, even government agencies, in order to enhance and to advance this very important conversation regarding why international is important. And more than that, to create awareness of how Kansas City actually participates in this global movement for not just for trade, but also for intercultural dialogue and increasingly dialogue of important issues like humanism and other important topics related not only to the economics, but also related to the people. So as a diplomat, Mexico has 50 consulates in the United States. So Kansas City is one of them. Not every consulate is located in every state. In the case of Kansas City, the consular district, the area that we cover, encompasses the state of Kansas, Missouri, and the western half of Oklahoma. So it's a large area. It's an area that is almost the size of Spain. So you can imagine. I mean, if you're an American, if you was born here and you live actually in a country that is also almost a continent, it is sometimes difficult to gauge the importance of how wide is this country and how different it is in its different regions. So in my job here in Kansas City, as any diplomat, is to represent my country, to inform my country of what is happening here, and also to protect the Mexican community living, traveling, conducting business in this part of the United States. So my daily duties include certainly not only the consular work related to being in contact and being a steward, if you will, of the Mexican community, but also enhancing the opportunities of dialogue, the opportunities of good relationship between Mexico and the United States. For that purpose, but that main political task is part of the duties of the Mexican embassy in DC. The importance for Mexico having 50 consulates all across the United States is that we can, concentrate that specific dialogue within relevant stakeholders, authorities, organizations in a given region of the country. And for me, it has been in these 5 years a very constructive and very important experience to have a profound knowledge of what is happening here in Kansas and Missouri, and particularly in the KC metro area that actually, make this connection between two very important states, and at the same time has a very particular socioeconomic, political, and cultural reality that makes this region very, very valuable and important. So part of my daily duties is basically building bridges in order to facilitate commerce with Mexico, building bridges in order to not only promote the importance of my country amongst relevant stakeholders, but also amongst students, business people, and many other members of the society. I guess Mr. Shen mentioned, for instance, the importance of the dialogue between the different organizations representing people that is originally from other countries. So that's also a great opportunity in order to advance that. And so on my daily task, on my daily either professional and in personal capacities, international is always present and is part of my my daily job as a consul here in Kansas City.
Thank you so much. I think what you've shared, it is certainly a daily part of your responsibilities, but what you speak to in terms of our countries as neighbors, and the not just the economic trade connections, but the connections of people, and how this becomes a home and a vibrant community that's about those international connections, I think is really valuable and important for us to always keep in mind, because we we can't lose track of it in our daily lives. You don't have that that opportunity because it's part of your daily life, I know, is your structure and responsibilities. But really, I think all of us are partners of you in that process as we go about our lives. So thank you. Now, as I think about going broadly and thinking about going from the kind of the personal, professional connections to Kansas City metro area as an international place, and thinking more broadly about businesses, our culture as a community, our educational system. And when I say education, I mean everything from kindergarten and preschool all the way through our higher education system. I'm wondering about where you see international embodied in those dimensions of society. So business, culture, and our education. And Ms. Shen, maybe you can start us off in a discussion of that and where you see international more broadly in the community in those big areas of our lives.
Absolutely. I am privileged because the nature of my job is to serve clients, which means I work with many business in the area. And I can tell you, I'm constantly surprised how almost, how many businesses are internationally involved. Most people think only the larger businesses will, but I can tell I work with many medium and smaller sized business in the Kansas City and the Western region. Many of them either are expanding their international market. I think people probably don't realize. So for example, many people think of Kansas City as a transportation hub, but we are also an animal health product hub. We are the largest animal health corridor in the world. So there are so many of the companies in our area are standing to exporting their products in Asian countries. For example, the kind of product my kids feed to their guinea pig. The other day I told them I'm working with that company to start selling in Asia. They are very excited. So that's just an example that many people don't realize how many companies in our region, they are expanding their market globally. And another thing they touch is the workforce. How many companies in the area, they have a diverse workforce, and many of them may be a skilled worker from other countries. And it touches on many businesses. So the business base here in Kansas City is very international. I think it's probably more than most people imagine because I have the privilege to work with those companies all the time. In terms of just the culture and the community, I think that's another thing. I don't know if people here realize how diverse a community we have. If you go in the community, sometimes if you just pay a little bit attention, you will find all kinds of grocery stores in our community. That usually is because there is a community representing that culture living in there. I personally interact with many like Japanese community, Korean community, Indian, many of those. But for example, Consul Navarro probably know many other communities from more of the Latin American countries, et cetera. But this is a very diverse city. If you look into it, you will find a representative community from almost every part of the world. And I think another thing for sure, Charlie, is people don't realize for all the schools in our area, all the universities, almost every university I work with, they have some kind of international program. We have a very active international student body, probably a little bit less so right now during COVID because some of them have to work with travel restrictions. But at a normal time, almost all major universities and some high schools here have a very active international student or exchange program. Any given time, we'll have international students in Kansas City. I think all of those components kind of come together as a fabric, make the business, the culture, and the education all come together. That this city that we're calling home is truly very international. I don't think you can avoid it. I mean, that's the reality. That's also why we have to live it and thrive in that environment.
Thank you. Yeah, and I agree. Not only can we not avoid it, but why would we want to, right? Because I think about what you're talking about, and from the food that a guinea pig eats, and thinking about global distribution, right, all the way to who is in our community, in our schools, and how do we connect with them and create these lifelong connections that will span the globe and help us thrive. Those are exciting opportunities. And so Consul Navarro, I wonder what your thoughts are in this place in terms of the intersection of business and culture and education in that international dimension of Kansas City.
Yeah, just take for instance two of the main school districts here in the area, both in Kansas and Missouri within the metro. Kansas City Public Schools, there are, and I was surprised when I learned this from the current superintendent, Bedell, almost 50 languages are spoken among the student body. So that's the testament of the importance and of the diversity in that particular area. This is the workforce of the future in Kansas City. Last night, President Biden made an important mention regarding education, and education is important for every country. So, and this is a workforce for the future here in this area. For the same token, KCK school district is a very, very diverse district, but as you know, Wyandotte County, where Kansas City, Kansas is located, is one of the most diverse areas, cities or urban areas in the country, and it's almost a third of the population Hispanic, white, and African American. So you can see how important is that diversity just in the education. And on the other hand, in culture, for instance, we have one of the finest cultural institutions here, the Nelson Atkins Museum, where they've been promoting cultural festivals showcasing many different countries. And one of the most successful festivals is the Day of the Dead Festival, Dia de los Muertos Festival of November. And the Kansas City community, the Kansas City metro community has embraced that Mexican tradition and has made a very, very unique cultural expression that is very, very own of Kansas City. So those are particular examples of how important. Now, Mexico, United States, and Canada are bidding for the World Cup, and Kansas City will certainly benefit for having maybe a World Cup matches in the future. The Golden Cup is also is going to be played here in the Kansas City in the coming months. Soccer is a very important way also to connect countries. And in the case of the United States, but also in the case of Mexico, and this is a very, very important cultural issue as well. Football soccer has been an important drive to empower women, to empower little girls, young women, in order to participate in activities that maybe just 20 years ago, 30 years ago, were considered male exclusive activities. And also gender equality is a very, very important issue in terms of culture, and is one of the main foreign policy priorities of the Mexican government nowadays. So you can see when we talk about culture, it's a broad area of opportunities, a broad area of items, and that will make a difference on how the world in we live in is going to be different in the future.
Thank you so much. And I think what you mentioned about our school system and 50 languages in that school system and what that represents in our future workforce, you connect that with walking down the street and what makes it feel like home and familiar, and you've got this really complex, dynamic kind of marketplace of ideas and opportunities that just create this wonderful mix of that is home, and it's both opportunity. It leverages us beautifully for the future. And as I thinking about your perspective Ms. Watley, and what CBIZ does and how that connects with that future workforce and the current workforce and how all that's shifted. I'd love to hear your thoughts about kind of education and business and culture and what you've seen and how you see Kansas City Metro changing as a response to these international connections.
Well, it's interesting, as Consul Navarro was mentioning, we work with a lot of school districts. They're clients of ours. And so I attend almost all of the breakfasts each year and to kind of celebrate and for that the foundations might have. And interestingly, there's always potentially a pie chart that shows all the different nationalities of students in that district. And you mentioned Kansas City, Kansas, and Kansas City Public Schools, but what you don't expect is the pie chart in Olathe to be as diverse as it is, and in Blue Valley, and on and on and on. So everywhere you go, it's just becoming more and more diverse all the time, and we find that very fascinating, and it makes us really think about what those school districts, how they're managing through dealing with all those different languages and educating our students for the future, for our future workforce. So we commend them on the job that they're doing. I think another thing that we recognize in the community is that we have a significantly strong, Feng mentioned our animal health corridor, which is very strong. And in another area is our architecture, construction, and engineering industry in Kansas City. And I don't think a lot of people understand the global impact of our architects and engineers and what we do here that's exported externally as in our technical skills. One of the fun things to think about, I think, is all of the sports stadiums and arenas that are designed and engineered by our companies here that are all over the world and that have done the Olympics of the past and are doing the Olympics of the future as well. And so that makes me so proud. And we've recently created a group called Casey Global Design to really bring those firms together so that they can work together to really elevate even further. So historically, they've been competitors. So everyone's kind of doing their own thing. And now the recognition is, what can we accomplish if we actually work together to create more prominence for what it is that we're doing, as well as how can we help bring a more diverse workforce to our firms, which have historically been not as diverse as we would want them to be in the future. So how can we attract the talent to have diversity in this area? And one of the things, for example, during COVID, we had Casey Rising had webinars, and we attracted people from all over the world that attended these webinars. And Casey Global Design did one on what sports stadiums in the future would be. And so when you look at Arrowhead or the Royal Stadium or anywhere else, and they were the ones that helped design how is this going to work during COVID and post-COVID, what do we need to do to change stadium designs, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not just stadiums, it's the water supply, it's all kinds of energy efficiencies that are being worked on here in Kansas City that we're exporting externally. And so we have so many, as Feng mentioned, small, medium-sized companies and large companies that are doing really significant work globally in that space. Black and Beach, for example, would be, as well as our sports architects. And we also have companies like Cerner working in the health technology space that are exporting that technology all over the world. Hallmark that is sending greetings all over the world, which is very important and helps us to tap into our Kansas City kindness and export that around the world as well, that Feng mentioned earlier. We also, we are a big exporter, and we have created through our World Trade Center a program with concierge services to help exporting. And you might not realize in 2019, for example, we had $7.6 million of exports, and they were exported to Canada, Mexico, Germany, Japan, and China. So if you ask yourself, what are the countries that we're exporting to? I don't know how many people would come up with that as the top list. So I think it is fascinating to dig into what are we doing. And then we also know that immigrants are more likely to start a business. As Feng mentioned, these local grocery stores or restaurants or shops right next to where I get my haircut. There's a Korean shop and a Korean grocery store. And so I'm always fascinated to look in the windows and peer in and, okay, that's what it would look like if I were shopping in Korea, for example. And so it gives me a little bit of flavor of that. And it's in Johnson County. So again, who expects that? But that's where that is. And so the Kauffman Foundation is amazing at supporting entrepreneurs, and our immigrants are more likely to start a business even than US residents are necessarily. So you think about a lot of those small to mid-sized businesses that Fang's talking about, they are a lot of international companies. And I think another thing to think about is as our birth rate is dropping, we also want to make sure that we are attracting the talent, again, the in-migration here. And we're getting older, so I might be one of those, but we're getting older. And so we need that to be an exciting place for young talent to come and find this to be an exciting place. And I think we have, for culture, we have all kinds of festivals that we celebrate various cultures, as the consulate was mentioning, which I think is very fun. You think about the Nelson Atkins, which was also mentioned. The CEO of the Nelson Atkins is an immigrant from Mexico and doing an absolutely fantastic job at overseeing a very globally renowned art museum. And so that's fun. In education, even at UMKC, our chancellor is also an immigrant from India. And so, we want to be attractive to great leaders as well, who can help bring new knowledge and expertise and innovations and ideas to help us grow here.
Thank you so much. I think about that, and what you're saying resonates so strongly with me as a higher education advocate and educator, because I see our role as community partners in enabling those contexts, in enabling a context for people to come and to remain here and transform our community in so many positive ways. And I think your comment there about the birth rate in this particular region, and how, and this has always been the case in the United States. The world's talent is our oyster, right? And the more that we can incorporate that into our lives and partner with institutions, businesses, educational institutions, but also important foundations like the Kauffman Foundation, where we're thinking deeply about how to integrate these different spaces into home and create sustainable opportunities that are complex and interesting and vibrant and long lasting. It's really, really important. So I'd like to ask each of you a more tailored question to your professional lives. And I'll start with you, Consul Navarro. And thinking about your experience in your work in politics, geopolitics, global trade, mobility, global health, supply chains, market reach, humanitarianism, advocacy and outreach. What would you say is important for Kansas Cityans to understand in terms of what's going on out there around the world? How does the world and what's going on connect with us here at home, in your view?
Yeah, thank you. Well, just again, let me give you maybe a couple of examples. And I guess a recent example is very clear of what is happening nowadays in our world, and particularly in the North American region. There's been an announcement of a prospect fusion or acquisition by either one or two Canadian rail companies of Kansas City Southern. That is one of the emblematic enterprises and businesses here in the Kansas City Metro, Kansas City Southern Rail. And one of the reasons in reading the different media articles regarding this possible acquisition, one of the part of the reasoning behind this interest of Canadian companies buying Kansas City Southern is the access that Kansas City Southern already have, and they have been building this in Mexico in the last 2-3 decades. And so when you see Kansas City, that actually we are at the consulate here is in the crossroad districts. We are in a very strategic position as a region. And I say we because I consider myself an adopted Kansas Cityan. And you can see that there's potential in the North American region, in the consolidation of the USMCA, the United States Mexico Canadian Commercial Agreement, and that's why and they are, business people is looking forward. Business people is trying to see that how is going to be the economy and the global markets after the pandemic. So this is a clear example of how geopolitics, economy, supply chains have a very clear influence in the Kansas City area. And the other example that I would like to mention is also talking about pandemics. You see that many vaccines have been developed by international companies, but many of the scientific or the people of science working behind these developments are immigrants. And just here in Kansas City, you have Dr. Barbara Pajut. She's a Mexican doctor. She's a pediatrician, and she's currently the Director of Research on Infection Diseases here at Children's Mercy Hospital, another very emblematic institution here in the area. So she's working on one group in order to develop and to investigate, to research a possible vaccine for kids. And so this is a great fact regarding how the importance of global reality is taking place here in Kansas City through science, through people from other countries that is making great contributions. When we talk about essential workers, you can think about Mexican people working in agricultural or in meat factories, but you also have to consider that there are engineers working, for instance, in Kansas City Solar. There are many people in the rail business working here that are originally from Mexico. You have Dr. Pajut in Children's Mercy. You have Julian Sugasagoitia in Nelson Atkins. You have Dr. Tataki working in advanced physics in KU, and so on. So when we talk about the importance of having a welcoming Kansas City Metro, is in the benefit both of Missouri and Kansas. So I guess we have considered that because also, and I guess due to the recent pandemic as well, there was a shortage of medical workers and in the hospitals, nurses, physicians, people that have people working in internal medicine. And when you consider, for instance, the impact that DACA recipients, DACA students could have in the states where there's still doubts about in-state tuition, and maybe 5 years ago, you could have afford an opportunity of those students to attend colleges and universities in one of those states. Maybe you won't have this current shortage of physicians and doctors and medical personnel trying to working in the pandemic. So we need to be very strategic regarding how our population, and when I said population, is everybody present here living, working, and conducting businesses in this area, how this population is important for the well-being, for the public health, for the economy, and for the enrichment of this region of Kansas City.
Thank you so much. I'd like to turn to you, Ms. Watley, because we've got this. We have an international presence here, right? World talent is coming, and I think about that context. And coming here doesn't mean you stay here. Coming here doesn't mean you feel welcome here. Coming here doesn't mean you feel like you have support. And those things help create community. and they enable people to stay and feel like they're part. Coming from Indiana, I too, this is my adopted home. And there's so many reasons for that, but I'd like you to maybe comment on how Kansas City can become as welcoming a place as possible as an international community, from a business, a culture, and education perspective. And I know you've been working with the Welcoming KC plan. How does that connect into this? And what are your thoughts there?
So first of all, welcome to all three of you to my hometown, Kansas City, Missouri. And we're glad to have all of you here and just look at the richness that we have because you're all here. So I'm very excited about that. So the KC Chamber has taken on the task of making certain that we have a welcoming plan for immigrants. And one thing is each year we take a leadership exchange trip to another city and we try to learn from that other community. What are the things that they do well that we should learn from, and what might we do well that we didn't even realize till we spent time in other places. But this coming up trip, which we were supposed to do last September, is going to be to Salt Lake City. And one of the attractive features for us of Salt Lake City is that they have a strong welcoming plan and a strong immigrant community. So we are very much looking forward to learning from them. What have they done? And what kind of success or what did they learn along the way that we should know? So we've put together our own welcoming plan, and it has not been implemented for a decade or two or three, but looking down the road, that's what we hope will happen. And there are many, many people who have worked on, over 40 different individuals and organizations have worked on putting this welcoming plan together. So it includes making sure that from a civic and education standpoint that we're providing education that like what are the responsibilities of local government so they understand what to expect here and what they should expect here. We want to work with neighborhood groups to help them provide support as needed, and support for the naturalization processes and accessibility to that information to help those who are interested in that. We want to assist with information on voting. So here's how you do it, and here's what it takes, and how we can provide that kind of information. We want our local governments to have welcoming resolutions, and so we want to work with each one of those to have their own welcoming plans and resolutions. And we want to focus on, in our education system, racial equity and inclusion and belonging. So belonging is part of wanting to stay here, so we want to make sure that that is part of our education. That we also have invitations to learn about each other. So we want to welcome in, but also how can we each learn from each other and have shared values and strengthen in the unification of all of us together. And so we also want to work with companies on their diversity, equity, and inclusion training and programming. We want to help small businesses, again, as we mentioned, and support for things like PPP. And that's something that our company did during COVID. And we want a whole structure to make sure that our businesses can know how to access that support and get that kind of support. We also want to make sure that we continue to expand the arts and cultural programs to be create more, and then celebrate the ones that we do have, as was mentioned earlier, which is, I think very, very exciting for us all to adopt more of those kinds of celebrations. And then to support those restaurants. So we think about, one of the things that we talk about right now is supplier diversity. So how can organizations rethink their current supplier strategy and include more diversity in that strategy? And if you think about where are the opportunities to include diverse businesses in that, and including the food that we order, or the legal services that we rely on, and consulting businesses, or any of those kinds of things. And we want to make sure that we provide support for licensing and credentialing, that maybe someone is licensed in another country, but how can we help them get licensed and credentialed here as well? How can we make sure that we have career pathways so that you can earn stackable credentials that will lead you to, again, one of those strong careers, which is very important. as obviously the Kauffman Foundation would be supporting entrepreneurs in many different ways. So we want to make sure that we're continuing to support our entrepreneurs here, and then help employers with compliance on visa requirements, and making certain that we're helping them to bring the talent here that they're looking for. We want to make sure we have that cultural and linguistic education, so that English as a second language that's being taught in all those school districts that we talked about earlier, and support for families with GED and vocational training, et cetera, financial aid and scholarships. Just there's so many different ways that we can do that. And I commend all of the people from the different, we had 7 different work groups, and again, over 40 different individuals and employers and companies, entities working to put our welcoming plan together. So hopefully we'll all be seeing all those different facets and more in action on an ongoing basis.
Thank you so much. Boy, I'd love to be a part of that leadership exchange in Salt Lake City. It sounds like an amazing opportunity. I was looking in the chat here, and Irina wrote about just an appreciation of all 3 of you as leaders and what you do. And as you're speaking, Ms. Watley, I'm just thinking about community is hard work, but it's so important, right? It's multifaceted. It takes us all working together and thinking about how we connect to really become a community. And I just want to echo what Irina has posted. Ms. Shen, thinking about each of our different situations, and not all of us can travel, right? Not all of us have an opportunity to go abroad, to live in a different country. And so besides traveling, what are things, and the pandemic, of course, is exacerbated this, right? Well, as you think about Kansas Cityans and what they can do themselves to connect globally from home, what are some things that come to mind, and what kinds of recommendations would you make for how we can get involved personally, professionally? I know you've done so much personally and through the IRC board work that you've done, but also your firm. Share some of your thoughts there.
Yes, I think part of what we're talking about here is really about why it is crucial to have an international oriented mind, but at the same time, what does that mean? To me, it all comes back to we basically have to understand each other better, because the reason we have to be international is because the people in other country are your future customers. They are potentially your coworker in the future. They could be your supplier. They could be your next partner on the project. And the whole reason that we need to understand each other is that's the start of understanding, to eliminate those bias or barriers, et cetera, to improve this whole community. And to me, it has always been the best place start is always culture and arts. One time, one of my good friends said, if you dance with someone, it's hard to hate them. So I have always made a point. I would say one way to make you appreciate and understand international is just take advantage of all the cultural and arts events that's offered locally by all these amazing organizations. Like IRC year-long put on educational events to help us to be a world citizen, understand some of what issues. But if that's not your take, if you're a little bit more entertainment minded, sort of like me, there are events like we have all mentioned Nelson Attica Museum. Each year they offer major festival like Indian Festival, like Chinese New Year Festival. And during pandemic, they have made efforts to make all of those virtual. So those will be to a lesser extent compared to their live events, but they are still very good events to offer you a taste of foreign culture. So one of the favorite events for the Kansas City is the Ethnic Festival, put on the Ethnic Enrichment Commission. I think it has been like 60 years or something. Last year was a 60-year anniversary. That's actually one of my favorite events. I mean, I probably have been to there like 10 years, and each year I bring my kids, and when some of my friends travel to here, I take them to that events, and they were just impressed by the collection of community represented. I would highly recommend Again, that one right now it's virtual. So you this 2021, you won't be able to go to that in person, but you can still appreciate that online. And there will be 3 days in August, late August. You know, if you just get on their website. Another event I highly recommend is the Dragon Boat Festival. So that's a representative, representative. That's another one of my friend when they were visiting from New York City, they were just shocked when they heard the drums on the Brush Creek. They rushed there trying to figure out what's going on. When they saw the dragon boats, they were like, where am I again? So those are just examples that to get a flavor of the culture of the people that you might one day to work with or call relatives or call friends. I think that's where the understanding come from. And another thing I have always, I guess that become part of me is because I lived in 2 different places, 2 entirely different culture. It is easier on the surface for people to see the differences first. But I think if you actually spend enough time in different places, we will realize people in different parts of the world, at the bottom, fundamentally, we are very similar. We want the same things. A lot of our cultures start from the same thing. We want to love our neighbors, love our family. So when you see their culture, their arts, a lot of time you start appreciation of that same origination, you know, how we love our children, all the arts that you find all come from the goodness. That's why I highly recommend people just take advantage of all these arts and culture events that our local organization offer. So when you cannot travel or during COVID, when you couldn't do other things, I think you can still appreciate international, all the diverse culture in the city.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And truly, your words are important reminders of all the wonderful opportunities that there are out there to engage in and be a part of this community. So thank you. And I'd like to thank all 3 of our panelists for their conversation this afternoon. And before we close, I know that Matthew Hughes has a couple of closing remarks, but thank you for a wonderful afternoon and conversation. It went all too quickly. But your insight and perspectives are just so important. And I feel privileged to have had the opportunity to be a part of this with you. So thank you. Matthew?
Charlie, thank you so much. And Consul Navarro and Feng and Carolyn, I am just sitting here in the deepest admiration of the work that you do and the leadership that you offer in this community around what it means for us to be international and why that matters. We are away from the borders and away from the coasts in Kansas City, but we are not away from the world. And I think it's really, really important that people are exposed to that as often as possible in as many ways as possible. And you've given us so much to think about. So thank you so much. Everyone, we hope that you can stay around and keep joining us for more of our Global Horizons day-long celebration. And again, thank you to our panelists. Charlie, thank you. And we'll see you all very soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.